Dr. Ramesh Rao, we have known for, I think if I remember correctly, when he was teaching at University of Southern Mississippi, I was teaching in Jackson, Mississippi, and he was teaching in Hattiesburg. That is where I met now. I'm recollecting right now. So, and I just want to just introduce Dr. Ramesh Rao right now. And he is a professor of communication at Columbia State University. He received his bachelor's degree from St. Joseph College, and then, of course, postgraduate diploma in journalism from Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. And he also received master's degree in communications from the University of Southern Mississippi and PhD in communications from Michigan State University. So that is where I went and received my master's degree in, I think, 1967. So he is very active. I keep reading some of his articles, especially his rebuttal to one of these ladies who has, I don't want to even tell the name, ladies who wrote something against India. That was one of the best presentations. And so he has written a number of articles, a number of books, and some of the books. So Gujarat after Godhra, Real Violence, Selective Outrage, and then Collision Conundrum, the BJP's Trials, Tribulations and Triumphs, Secular Gods, Blame Hindu Dharma Demon, and IDRF, Let the Facts Speak, and UPI Essays, and many other books. So it is really my pleasure and introducing Dr. Ramesh Rao, and it is a pleasure talking to him and seeing his progress over the years. And so I want to invite Dr. Ramesh Rao to say something about the richness and the glory of our Hindu heritage. Thank you.
Good morning, good evening, good day, wherever you are in this vast world, and happy to be connected, at least from here in Columbus, Georgia, this morning. First of all, my thanks and regards to Professor Prakash Rao for his graciousness, for the work that he has been doing in the kind of example that he is setting for those who want to do something or who despair about some of the challenges. I think he presents an example that we can all follow, that in the sense that whatever challenges we face, we do need to respond in the best way that we can with the resources that we have. I would also like to thank Subhash. I know he had to leave, but to follow Subhash is a challenge. He is a fount of knowledge. He has done amazing work, of course, which everyone has recognized, except, of course, the Rakshasas. But I think of Subhash's presentation today, and I kind of compare it to maybe drinking from a fire hose, because there is so much coming out that it is for those of us who are not well read in these areas, who don't have the kind of foundational information about these matters, and which seem to come so easily out of Subhash's mouth and mind. It is therefore a journey that all of us have to take in terms of even being able to grasp all of the ideas that he has presented this morning. And maybe therefore it is time for me to just kind of turn on the regular tap so that you can drink more easily, okay? And it also reflects my own kind of knowledge, which is very limited, in the sense that I am not a Sanskritist. I don't hold a degree in philosophy or religion. I am more of a journalist and generalist. But yes, I do have about 35 years of experience now here in the US teaching communication courses, a vast range of communication courses, everything from public speaking to interpersonal communication to media and culture, persuasion. And these are areas that kind of touch upon a variety of the aspects of human endeavor. Whatever we may do in this world is all based on communication, speech, as Subhash mentioned, because that is the primary question. And I think talking about primary questions, it is very important, to recognize that, all animals live in the present. But we are strange animals. We human beings struggle to live in the present, which is an interesting, amazing paradox that then opens up this box of the cosmos that Subhash was mentioning. Okay, now that we are in this condition of struggling with our past, ruining, regretting, celebrating, whatever in the past, I did that, I did this, that's gone, over. Or I fear this, I expect this, I hope this, something in the future. Somehow this mind of ours, this chitta of ours, seems to be, of course, as the yogis say, chitta vritti nirodha. Without cessation of the mind, we cannot live in the present. And that kind of a paradox is something that, of course, the work of Subhash and what he summarized, I think, enables us to kind of understand the human condition and how we Hindus, and here again is kind of a challenge when we kind of label ourselves something, that we are separating ourselves from the rest of humanity. And that, I think, is also a Hindu tradition to kind of say, we are all one. Really, we don't have to label ourselves. We don't have to belong to a tribe. But then it is also the human condition that we seek those tribal identities because we find some comfort. I'm just about completing reading Swamiji Tapovanam's wonderful kind of biography, travels, and he constantly keeps referring to his own Malayali background. It's amazing. Someone who gives it all, who travels in these harshest conditions, who has, as he himself claims, that realized Brahman, yet cannot let go of his Malayali identity. So that is the kind of human condition. But then Subhash has talked about it. My presentation, and this is where I am going to be sharing my screen, and if I'm permitted to do so, just to kind of walk through. And, it's not going to be, hopefully, thankfully, death by PowerPoint slides, but I'm just going to take about 20 minutes to kind of walk myself through, and therefore walk you through this, much more mundane kind of a issue or a framework. And that is our life as Hindus and our presentation of Hinduism in the American context. That will be my focus this morning. And let me see if I can share my screen. So, as I said, to kind of come from the very high level and the enormously gorgeous overview that Subhash presented, to kind of look at from a ground level, what is it that we Hindus face here in the US? How do we present ourselves? How do we present this faith of ours, this belief of ours, this attitude of ours, and this nature of this of Hinduism itself? And this is where, once again, it's very important to acknowledge that, and I'll come to that issue. But in terms of the American tradition or the American engagement with Hindus and Hinduism, we go back to what is at least very familiar to us Hindus here in the US especially is in the 19th century, how these great Americans, Thoreau, Emerson, others discovered and had this kind of moments of clarity and how they celebrated this new discovery. And what was the discovery? The discovery was, reading the Bhagavad Gita. So, Thoreau saying, in the morning, I bathe my intellect. Here this engagement of ourselves in this newly opened world that the Bhagavad Gita offered for him. And which he says, compared with our modern world and its literature, our modern world, he says, looks puny and trivial. And that is very important for those of us who struggle. And as Subhash mentioned, this constant refrain of jati and caste and women's condition or whatever it is that, of nationalism, fascism, and so on, that is foisted upon us. It is very important to start here, just so that we regain and we re-present the plank upon which all of the discussions about us here should start from. Or as Emerson said, the Bhagavad Gita is an empire of thought. Empire of thought. It's not some grand, Roman or Greek empires where they conquered places. It's an empire of thought. And the philosophical teachings. There are issues that he kind of says, the Upanishadic absolute, for example, which again, Subhash's talk offered us a glimpse into that absolute and how we individuals, Atmans, can relate to that absolute, the Brahman. I think, therefore, those of us here today, listening, speaking, should be constantly aware, because we otherwise, unfortunately, tend to get sucked into a kind of this new world, this new kind of absolute, the social media absolute, that is very restricting. Of course, I have to be careful here and not too broadly generalize, because it all depends on what you read on social media, who you engage, through social media. And this is also that I tell, my friends here in Columbus, or I tell my students, or sometimes I bemoan that when, for example, wherever we are here in the US, our temples, we find that, yes, we celebrate our festivals. We do some wonderful things. We celebrate Deepavali is coming soon next week. We celebrate Holi and all of the wonderful, gorgeous things. But when someone, outside of the Hindu fold asks us, so what is it about your religion? Tell us. We usually kind of struggle. We don't know where to start. And we don't know where to start because we really don't read about ourselves. We have not really understood about ourselves. We have just performed. And here again, I am generalizing. There are always exceptions among us, those who know at least some basics. And this is what, for me, that I share, when I'm asked to do a guest lecture at a, some sociology class or philosophy class, or, an international, addressing international students, I present them this, how is it that, we Hindus, where do we come from? What do, is there a book of ours? Or as our wonderful friend said, no, Hinduism is a religion of the library, not of a book. But even that is not really correct. In my view, it's kind of interesting, clever, but it is beyond, merely a series of books or a whole variety of knowledge, but to kind of understand this quest for the knowledge of the ultimate reality, that that which is immanent, and that which is seeps through everything that is there. And it is also transcendent. And this is, I would say, as human beings, as a different kind of animal, that is what we Hindus seek after. And then, about our kind of original text, and about our belief in the nature of this universe. And here again, Subhash's work and his conversations with the top philosophers, scientists, cognitive scientists, political scientists, and a variety of others who are interested in how we progress to the next stage. Surely if we are going to believe in a kind of a Darwinian universe, then what is the next stage of this human being? And is it merely a kind of a material progress or a change? Or have we always known as this creature of the cosmos that, these kinds of material developments is merely, from an Advaitic perspective, Maya, illusion. We believe in karma, the cause of, in terms of the law of, action and effect and results. And this belief that we reincarnate when we kind of struggle, sure, all of us, whatever the status may be in our lives, at my age, hey, I'm looking at retirement. You may be just starting your careers, you may be students, or you may already be in that position of the retiree and saying, what have I done? Where have I been? Where am I going to go next? And what are my concerns? These core beliefs are very important for us because it offers us, it's not merely something to soothe this brain or this mind of ours, but which enables us to understand the human condition. And finally, to understand that, we are, yes, we have faith, but we when we talk about the darshanas, darshana, literally an opening up and seeing. And the 6 major schools and so on. And this is also something that I tell my friends, in terms of temple committees and so on. Look, we need to tell our children here. We need to tell our young people here. What is it? Because it's not merely to go to the temple and do some, Satyanarayan Puja or celebrate Deepavali without understanding why we are doing it and what is the nature of this Hindu cosmos. Then we are failing them as parents, as teachers, as leaders of communities. And this is where, once again, what the kind of work that Prakash Rauji is doing is very, very important. And I'm going to skip this, but I want to come to this. The condition, the presence of Hindus in the US, and the kind of challenges that we have. And I'm going to take about 10-15 minutes to go through the next about 6 or 7 slides. We Hindus are a very small minority, or as the Hindu American Foundation uses the word, we are a micro minority. We're a very small minority. It's just 7.7% of the 340 million people in the US. And of the Indian Americans in the US, Hindus are only 53%. This is something that I constantly point out to our detractors. This whole, dismantling global Hindutwas, and this somehow that we Hindus are here to kind of take over, in the American reality or to reshape it. Look, even whatever the 3 million Indian Americans that are there, we are just about 1.5 million. And that is, and there are various reasons as to why that is so. We'll not go into that. But in terms of our presence here, in beyond what Thoreau and Emerson discovered in the mid-19th century, the first real powerful presence in the US, of course, is Swami Vivekananda, who addressed the World Parliament of Religions, the first one in 1893. and when who started the Vedanta Society in 1894, and that's when there was this, and of course, there is an essay of mine that is going to be published in a collection of essays that is going to be published by the University of North Carolina Press, coming out early next spring. I talk about these matters and how Vivekananda, for example, Swamiji, did not just have this wonderful reception in Chicago, but when he traveled, people threw stones at him. People wrote terrible commentaries about his presence and about his talk and about, who he was. And after Vivekananda, it was, of course, the autobiography of a yogi, Paramahamsa Yogananda. His presence was brought then the second wave of interest in, the Hindu world, the Hindu belief system. And then if we skip the next stage, of course, was the 1960s and 70s. Really, in terms of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi ji, Swami Prabhupada, ISKCON, those movements starting in the 1960s and 70s. But now we are, through all those periods, of course, there were still detractors, Mother India, those books, kind of stuff, which tried to both deride us as a people, to kind of demonize us as false believers and so on. So this, therefore, is the present kind of, if I'm going to kind of offer a framework for those of us Hindus living here in the US, and as, Subhash said, then forget about the next generation. The next decade, the next 2 decades are going to be a kind of an Indian Hindu decade, not again in a celebratory superpower way. And this is very important. I see this, for those of us who seek that kind of, identity. I don't think our identity should necessarily be around this idea of, GDPs and per capita incomes and so on, while that is important because that offers groups, tribes, nations, real power. What do we do with that real power is important. And this is where, as Subhash mentioned, I think that change in our understanding about the nature of humanity, the human quest, and what is there for all of us, this grand opening up of the universe, that over the last 2000 years, unfortunately, has been, been taken over by this kind of what I call monopolistic, supremacist ideological groups, whether they are faith-based in terms of Christianity and Islam, or in terms of political ideology like Marxism and communism. When I say supremacist, it's simple, that they have it. What they have is the supreme. And monopolist, because you have to believe in us. Otherwise, you are, in terms of being unbeliever, you are literally not just a lower rung, but we need to change you. We need to make you a believer. And believer in what? A very restricted understanding about the nature of the human quest. So in terms of those of us here in the US, we need to kind of, get a handle on this, our long history, that we just, say, what is our one book? If some people say, hey, the Bhagavad Gita, and there are some people who don't know where the Bhagavad Gita resides in the book within a book, and we come from this mini sampradayas, our various darshanas, and this whole idea about jati and varna, which again quickly that Subhash pointed out, jatis did not really identify themselves with varnas. And that kind of identification only was foisted upon us, or we became much more conscious. And once something is put into our consciousness, and once that is framed that way, we know what has happened, therefore, over the last 200 years. We have really, I see people, my good friends even, saying, we need to get rid of the caste system. We know we have to find some way of dealing with the caste system. And I keep saying, oh, okay, give me some ideas. There is nothing except maybe a Marxist version where we literally, disappear people, we cancel people. We see that this whole cancel movement that is right now happening in the US, that is spreading across the world. That cancellation comes once again from the need for this monopolist forces to kind of put a stamp on what is real, unreal, who is good, who is bad, who is right, who is wrong. The next challenge for us here in the US, and surely, of course, whatever challenge we have in the US is brought from back in India, our original home. That is our language identities, our regional identities. And I mentioned Swami Tapovan saying, constantly referring to his Malayali identity. And this is where, for example, interesting that when Swami Vivekananda, went to Kerala, he was excited to find a Bengali there and to eat Bengali food. So we cannot, distance ourselves from that which is familiar to us. I am a Kannadiga. I love, I come from a whatever Madhwa background. I love my, Kutu and Huli, and, there are certain kinds of things that we have to celebrate. There is, this whole idea that we need to kind of merge our identity with some kind of a abstract global identity is meaningless. But while we celebrate our language, our foods and our dresses and our music and so on, what is important, as all of our gurus and sages have said, is to say, that is merely limited stuff that we do, but transcendentally, we are all in the same boat. The other thing that we need to recognize is this attacks over millennia, whether in India, both physically, but also in terms of, our ideology, in the sense of what we believe in, what we have contributed. And this 2000 years has been a difficult period. But if you look at the life of the Homo sapiens, and if we acknowledge, if we simply kind of acknowledge what at present people say about age of the Homo sapiens, we have been here for 100,000 years. We don't know, depending on new discoveries, we may, push back and all of those kinds of things. But 2000 years is fairly short period. In that 100,000 years, we have, in terms of this species. And now we have, I have been here in this country now for 4 decades. I've been, I came here in 1985. I see this, the kinds of changes that I've seen. And it's getting faster and more powerful and sometimes more scary, simply also because of what technology has brought us since 2000, early 2000. But of course, going back into the 1990s and the internet and so on. But especially in terms of social media and everyone carrying that little phone in our hands, that which is our world, and we constantly looking and constantly being either afraid or excited about some little tweet or some little post on some little social media platform. Okay. And what we see here is interesting in terms of how we have also brought Indian politics into America. And therefore, among the various minorities who are celebrated here in the US, Hindus are excluded. So you take a look at the South Asian, event, any South Asian event. You rarely, if ever, find someone who calls themselves Hindu, or if they call themselves Hindu, they are not literally Hindu in the sense, for example, and I'm going to name them, Hindus for human rights, they say. And who do they exclude from the human rights? Their understanding of human rights. They exclude the Hindus. They deny that Hindus are discriminated. And people like Professor Anantanand Rambachan, who has even written about us Hindus who express concern about being discriminated against. And he goes to the length of demonizing us. So these among the secular South Asian minority groups, what is interesting is that we Hindus are then strangely enough, both, in terms of, these are castes, and therefore they are like white supremacists. We are branded right wing. And unfortunately, some people, among Hindus, kind of easily getting trapped by these things. Oh, yeah, you have a support of one politician, or, Trump, promise something, to kind of, quickly jump onto those bandwagons, not realizing the kinds of problematic nature about our Hindu human condition. And that is, we are, as the cliche goes, caught between a rock and a hard place, or between the devil and the deep sea, because we don't represent any kind of a monopolistic supremacist tradition. Again, I've already mentioned this, but one of the changes that we have seen, in terms of the Indian and then the Hindu presence in the US, is that what happened in terms of the 1990s, the software high-tech revolution, the whole Y2K-ish problem that brought a large number of techies into the US, and now therefore the Indian presence, beyond the first generations of doctors and scientists who came in, we now have a whole lot of tech people. In every town where there is a bank or there's an industry, you will find a techie who is, here either permanently or on, some kind of a visa, traveling across the US, 3 months here, 6 months there, and so on. So that is our presence right now. And I'm, I've already mentioned this, so I'm not going to dwell on this. And this is the challenge, and I'm just going to take 2 more minutes. The diversity of Hinduism, starting from our darshanas, starting from our sampradayas, starting from our linguistic differences, starting from our jatis, groups, we are, all of those things are used to pit one against the other. And this is unfortunately reflected, whether, in our temple committees, whether in the way we celebrate something, our photo op opportunities, we don't have that kind of singular Hindu identity. And there's a constant, juggling for power and again, that is also, I think, a reality in flux, a kind of a momentary glimpse into what is happening right now and what has maybe happened over the last 30 years. But that is also going to change as we individually and as groups discover what it is that we actually want to share with others, and not sharing in terms of converting. Or as Professor Arvind Sharma mentions, Hindus and Hinduism is not a proselytizing religion. We are not proselytizers, but we are missionaries. And he uses the word missionaries in a kind of a careful sense. What are we missionizing about? It's like when Swami Vivekananda came here. His mission was to open up the grand cosmos to the world. That is our mission. There is nothing more. It's not a conversion into my jati or my group or my religion. No, not my sampradaya. But opening up the world, that is our mission. And that's why Professor Sharma, again, I recommend him because he has written so much about these matters. And here again, unfortunately, as I said, these monopolistic, monotheistic, supremacist groups in collusion with what, again, Subhash mentioned, this kind of left Marxist progressive groups that have launched what? What do they want? They want kind of, heaven on earth now. Initially, it was equality. Now it is about equity. No one can define, even in my university, when I ask, okay, define for me equity. Maybe, it's all confusion. Do we want to have equity in the sense of a percentage of people from different race, sex, ethnic, linguistic, other backgrounds represented in every aspect of life or a group or an institution? They are left confused. Or if I ask them, okay, does equity mean that all of these different groups based on, skin color, this, that, and so on, all should have equal outcomes in any effort that they do? Here again, that seems to be the unstated goal, but which, I can call it idiotic, but that is their goal. And we have seen this, and this is not a new one. And literally hundreds of millions, if not billions, have been slaughtered. Cultures have been devastated, have been, we have seen this. This is nothing new. So they have done it, and they want to continue to do it using, because, and this is very attractive. This is very seductive for our young people. There's so many, in fact, even a daughter of a good friend of mine is now part of this equality labs, and is so angry and wants to kind of literally destroy Hinduism, because they don't have any clue about what it is that we represent, and because of the seductive nature of this. When we are young, our understanding of the world is very simplistic. It's not simple, it's very simplistic, superficial. And because of that simplistic nature of our understanding of the world, we also tend to be authoritarian. Why can't we get rid of these bad people all, once and for all? Kind of a silver bullet that will somehow bring, heaven on earth, bring equality, offer equity. Again, not knowing what all that means, but that has been tried, and at very, very, very terrible human cost. Okay, so I say this is a civilizational battle that we Hindus are facing, and I know Subhash is a more benign kind of approach, and he thinks that he thinks the good changes are going to come soon, but I would say that Prakash Rao Garu and I are a little bit more concerned about the immediate present and what we face here. But then we do have groups. We have groups like the Hindu American Foundation. We have, of course, Prakash Rao Garu's group, the Global Hindu Heritage Foundation. We have the Hindu Students Council, the Hindu American Political Action Group. I have worked for, and I was an executive council member of the Hindu American Foundation. I'm now a consultant for Seva International, trying to do good work based on Hindu ideals, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, and all of those, things which we kind of say, but we don't always. Again, caution to all of us who somehow think that because we have the label Hindu, we are good. No, I think our goodness should be reflected in the kind of work that we do, in the words that we speak, in the actions that we take, and what we represent. So here again, Subhash mentioned something about Hindu temples offering, enabling, the acquisition of knowledge, the offering of degrees, and so on. So I too say, yes, Hindu temples should be, yes. Our ideal, of the temple is what? We go there, we take darshan of our, favorite Ishta Devata, we pray. Well, the pujari there will speak, for us and help, talk to the gods, saying, please, this person from this background, this Godhra is come here this morning, for your seva. That's about it. Unlike, the priests in the Christian and the Muslim tradition and the other ideological non-faith traditions, they talk to us. They try to guide us about the world. So here I say Hindu temple should become the hubs of social, religious, and cultural life for Hindu communities for the sake of our children and grandchildren. It should help set examples for the next generation of Hindus, offer facilities to provide for education in the Vedic way. Here again, I'm just repeating what Subhash has already mentioned. Train priests. They can be centers for the sharing of value, knowledge, and practices of our ways of thinking, our books, our ideas, help preserve and explain the meaning of these texts, help preserve Sanskrit and other original religious texts, offer support and help, So these are things that we can do. And therefore, to wrap it up, as we celebrate this month as the Hindu Heritage Month, it cannot simply be some kind of symbolic thing. We have whatever, the Black History Month, various other kinds of months and so on. And it is also not, it should not become yet another American tradition of dicing and slicing various ethnic, linguistic, religious groups for, to acquire power in terms of political power in this country. No, I think this Hindu Heritage Month should therefore be used, again, not merely to celebrate festivals, celebrate dresses and how to wear a bindi or how to make, put henna on hands, and all that is wonderful. That is nice tactile stuff. But we should be aware of our presence here, not merely as an ethnic group, as a cultural group, or as a national group, or whatever, but that we are here to share in this grand vision of the grand journey of this species called human beings. That should be our foundational guide and goal. If that is so, then what Subhash thinks is going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years will happen. And again, not for the sake of India, not for the sake of Hindus, quote unquote, but for the sake of humanity as we progress as a species, as part of this world, to kind of understand Brahman. That is our goal. There is, and that is a very grand and amazingly thrilling goal to have for each one of us. And as a group, if we can do that, I think, we will be serving both our interests and a kind of a cosmic global interest. With that, I would like to wrap up. I want to thank once again Prakash Rao Garu for this opportunity. I would like to, of course, thank my good friend Subhash for leading, this morning's presentation. And it is my pleasure, my privilege to be here with all of you today.
Thank you so much, Ramesh Rao Garu. I'm so glad that you agreed and participated in this discussion to highlight the richness and the glory of our Hindu heritage. This is the time that we have to speak up and see that our ideals, our belief system, the universal belief system is nothing secular. In fact, it is probably much broader than anything that anybody can imagine. And so we have to attack all these demons, I think, as many of us have been saying, and we have to present exactly what we stand for. I think this is where we are failing, and we have to be vocal. We have to address these issues wherever we go. I mean, your presentation, starting with Emerson and Thoreau and all those people. And I remember distinctly, I read that one. I have an article in our website, Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman. These are the three people. And the first Bhagavad Gita came to this country in, I think, 1837, something like that one. And what I know is that Bhagavad Gita was read more frequently or by more people than any book in Harvard University at that time. So it has become that popular. And now you already traced the later on Paramahansa Yogananda, Swami Vivekananda, and all these people, how they have contributed the concept of mission and missionaries kind of concept. And I think our mission should be to see that universal message of Hindu heritage is spread all across. as you also mentioned, I think it is our utmost responsibility to see that our knowledge is transmitted to the next generation, because the statistics you showed, only 53% are youngsters. So that means we are not doing our job. I think we have to figure it out. How do we convey this information? That side presentation is going to be a starting point for any of us. And we can use that PowerPoint presentation and pass on that information to next generation, so that way they will be equipped with our heritage as well as the universality of our Hindu Dharma. And I really thank you so much for ready willingness, even though you were busy this weekend with your children and whatnot, because they came all the way from whatever place, I don't remember, but still you decided to spend 2 hours with us, listening and then speaking to all of us. And so I really appreciate so much for our continued association. Hopefully we will see you again in one of these meetings. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.